No one cared about Dragon Emperor's sick son until a human cleaner carried him to hospital. Then, before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The gleaming corridors of Imperial Station Draconos 7 were silent at this hour. The massive space station orbited high above the Dragon homeworld, a golden ring visible from the planet's surface, a symbol of power and authority across 7-star systems. Ethan Cole hunched over his cleaning cart, guiding it through the empty corridor of the Royal Medical Wing. His blue maintenance uniform stood out against the ornate gold-flecked walls and ceilings. Even at 3 a.m. station time, the place glittered with ostentatious wealth. As a member of the station's janitorial staff, Ethan was invisible to the dragon nobility that strutted these halls during daylight hours. Just another human worker, one of thousands brought to dragon space to perform the menial tasks the proud draconic species considered beneath them. 32 years old and 6 years into his 10-year labor contract, Ethan had developed an instinct for staying unnoticed. Keep your head down, do your work, don't make eye contact with the dragons. Simple rules that kept humans out of trouble in Imperial space. He'd been assigned to the medical wing for just 3 weeks, a promotion, his supervisor had said, though the pay remained the same. At least the doctors and medical staff treated the cleaners with a modicum of respect. The dragon nobility acted like humans were furniture that occasionally moved. As he turned the corner toward the Royal Pediatric Wing, Ethan heard a sound that made him freeze. A thin, wheezing cough, followed by a weak moan. He glanced at his wrist terminal. The pediatric wing should be empty tonight. The display confirmed it. No patients, no scheduled staff. Another weak cough echoed down the corridor. 6 years of conditioning told Ethan to ignore it. Not his business. Not his problem. Probably just a doctor working late. But something in the sound, the pain, the desperation, made him push his cart toward the source. The Royal Pediatric Wing was even more lavish than the rest of the medical facility, with walls of shimmering scale-like material that changed color with the light. Only dragon nobility's children would be treated here, in rooms that looked more like luxury hotel suites than hospital rooms. The coughing grew louder as Ethan approached the last room on the right. The door was slightly ajar, spilling a thin line of light onto the polished floor. He hesitated, hand hovering near the door. If there was a dragon noble inside, especially a child, he could be severely punished just for being here uninvited. Another painful cough decided it for him. Ethan pushed the door open. The room was dimly lit. The medical monitors switched to night mode. On the large bed, nearly lost among plush pillows and silken sheets, lay a small dragon child. Even to Ethan's untrained eye, the child looked desperately ill. The young dragon's scales, which should have been a vibrant emerald green, were dull and flaking. His breathing was shallow and labored, each intake of breath seeming to cause pain. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway. The young dragon's eyes fluttered open, vertical pupils dilating in the dim light, and fixed on him. They were a startling amber color, clouded with fever and pain. Water, the child rasped in Imperial Standard, the language used between species. Please. Snapping out of his shock, Ethan hurried to the bedside. A water pitcher sat on the nightstand, but it was empty. He grabbed it and filled it in the room's lavatory, then poured a glass for the child. Here, let me help you sit up, Ethan said softly, setting aside all protocols about touching nobility as he gently supported the dragon child's head and shoulders. The boy was burning with fever, his scales hot to the touch. The child drank greedily, spilling some down his chin. When he finished, Ethan carefully lowered him back to the pillows. Thank you, the boy whispered. No one comes when I call anymore. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Where are your doctors? Your nurses? The child's amber eyes blinked slowly. They gave up. Father gave up too. Said I was too weak to be his son. A cold knot formed in Ethan's stomach. He glanced at the medical monitors. Even with his limited knowledge, the readings looked dangerously abnormal. The boy's temperature was far above what should be normal for a young dragon, and his oxygen levels were critically low. What's your name? Ethan asked gently. Prince Xeris, the child replied. Fourth son of Emperor Drakthar. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. He was standing in the room of the Emperor's son, the ruler of the Dragon Imperium, the most powerful being in this part of the galaxy. And somehow, this child had been left alone, desperately ill. Prince Xeris, where is your medical staff? Ethan asked again, trying to keep his voice steady. The prince closed his eyes, exhaustion evident in every line of his small body. They said the treatments weren't working, that I had the wasting, that it was only a matter of time. His voice dropped to a whisper. Father said a true dragon prince would fight off the illness himself or die with dignity, not waste resources. Ethan felt sick. The dragon's culture valued strength above all else, but to abandon a child, even by their harsh standards, this seemed extreme. He looked around the room. The medical equipment was state-of-the-art, but dormant. The medication dispensers were empty. A thin layer of dust had settled on some of the surfaces. How long had the prince been here alone? As if reading his thoughts, Prince Xeris spoke again. 3 days since anyone came. The automated systems give me water sometimes. Food when I can eat it. Another painful cough racked his small frame. But it hurts now. Everything hurts. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. In that moment, he made a decision that would change not only his life, but the fate of the Dragon Imperium itself. I'm going to help you, he said firmly. I'm taking you to the human medical section. Prince Xeris' eyes widened. But father forbade it. Said human medicine was primitive, unworthy of royal blood. With all due respect to your father, Ethan said, already moving to disconnect the dormant monitoring equipment, human medicine might be exactly what you need right now. He wrapped the prince in the silken bedsheets. The child weighed surprisingly little, his body frail from illness. Carefully, Ethan lifted him, cradling him against his chest. The prince's head rested against his shoulder, hot with fever. Hold on, Your Highness, Ethan whispered. I've got you. Ethan had made it halfway down the corridor when the reality of what he was doing hit him. He was taking the Emperor's son, without permission, to the human section of the station. It was a violation of at least a dozen Imperial laws. If caught, the best he could hope for was immediate deportation back to Earth. The worst, well, the dragons were not known for their merciful justice system. But looking down at the sick child in his arms, Ethan knew he couldn't turn back. The prince's breathing had grown more labored, his small body trembling with fever. Whatever was killing him was moving fast. Ethan tucked the prince more securely against his chest and ducked into a service corridor. The maintenance passages would be free of security cameras and patrolling guards. It would take longer to reach the human medical section this way, but it was their only chance of getting there undetected. The service corridors were narrow and dimly lit, designed for maintenance drones rather than humanoid workers. Ethan had to duck in places to avoid hitting his head on exposed pipes and conduits. The air was hot and stale, recycled from the station's life support systems before being filtered and sent to the main areas. Prince Xeris stirred in his arms. Where are we? He asked weakly. Service tunnels, Ethan replied, negotiating a tight corner. The fastest way to the human sector without being seen. I've never been to the human sector, the prince murmured. Father says it's dirty and uncivilized. Ethan managed a smile. It's not as fancy as your part of the station, that's for sure. But it's home for us humans up here. The prince fell silent again, his breathing growing more strained. Ethan quickened his pace, worry gnawing at him. What if he was too late? What if the human doctors couldn't help? What if they refused to treat a dragon prince without official authorization? After what seemed like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, Ethan reached the access point to the human sector. He shifted the prince carefully to one arm while he input his worker ID code into the panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the stark contrast between the opulent dragon sections and the utilitarian human areas. The corridor was plain gray metal, the lighting functional rather than decorative. Signs in English and several other Earth languages directed workers to various facilities, mess halls, recreation areas, dormitories, and, most importantly, the medical center. Ethan hurried down the corridor, ignoring the surprised looks from the few night shift workers he passed. The human sector operated on a different schedule than the Dragon areas, with maintenance crews, engineers, and service staff coming and going at all hours. The medical center was a modest facility compared to the gleaming Dragon hospital wings, but what it lacked in luxury, it made up for in practicality. Ethan burst through the sliding doors, the prince held tightly in his arms. "I need help," he called out, his voice echoing in the quiet reception area. A startled nurse looked up from her station, her eyes widening as she took in the sight of a human maintenance worker carrying a dragon child wrapped in silk sheets. "What in the world?" she began, but was cut off as Dr. Sarah Morgan emerged from a nearby exam room. The doctor took one look at the situation and immediately sprang into action. "Bring him here," she ordered, gesturing to an examination room. "Nurse Brooks, prep the scanner and alert Dr. Bennett." Ethan followed Dr. Morgan into the exam room and gently laid Prince Zeras on the bed. The prince's eyes fluttered open, fear evident in his amber gaze as he took in the unfamiliar surroundings. "It's okay," Ethan reassured him, taking the small clawed hand in his own. "These people are going to help you." Dr. Morgan was already scanning the prince with a handheld diagnostic device, her expression growing more concerned with each passing second. "This child is critically ill," she said. "Severe respiratory distress, dangerously high fever, signs of systemic infection." She looked up at Ethan. "Who is he? And why isn't he in the Dragon medical facilities?" Ethan swallowed hard. "He's Prince Zeras, fourth son of Emperor Drakthar. And he's here because they abandoned him. Said he had something called the wasting and that he was beyond help." Dr. Morgan's eyes widened in shock, but her professional demeanor didn't waver. "The wasting? That's what they diagnosed him with." Ethan nodded. "That's what the prince told me. They left him alone for 3 days. Just waiting for him to die." A flash of anger crossed the doctor's face, quickly replaced by determination. "Well, we're not going to let that happen." She turned to the nurse who had just entered with a tray of equipment. "We need to start broad-spectrum antibiotics and antivirals immediately. And get the cooling blankets. We need to bring his temperature down." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Dr. Lauren Bennett arrived to assist, and together the medical team worked to stabilize the prince. Ethan stayed by the prince's side, holding his hand and offering what comfort he could as the doctors inserted IVs and attached monitoring equipment. "The good news," Dr. Morgan told Ethan as she studied the results of their comprehensive scan, "is that I don't think this is the wasting at all. The symptoms are similar, but there are key differences." "What do you think it is?" Ethan asked, hope rising for the first time. Dr. Morgan tapped her tablet. "Based on these results, I believe it's a severe bacterial infection that's progressed to sepsis. The dragon's physiology is different from ours, but in many ways, our immune systems work similarly. And this," she pointed to a cluster of bright spots on the scan, "looks very much like a bacterial infection we sometimes see in humans. It's aggressive but treatable with the right antibiotics." "So you can help him?" Ethan asked. "I believe so," Dr. Morgan said cautiously. "But I have to warn you, Ethan, what you've done is going to have serious repercussions. Taking a royal child from the Dragon sector without permission, the Emperor will not be pleased." Ethan looked down at Prince Zeras, who had finally fallen into a more peaceful sleep as the medications began to take effect. "They left him to die," he said quietly. "What was I supposed to do?" Dr. Morgan placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing. I just want you to be prepared for what comes next." As if summoned by her words, the medical center's alarms began to blare. A voice over the intercom announced, "Security alert. All personnel remain at your stations. Imperial guards approaching human sector." Ethan's heart sank. They know he's missing. Dr. Morgan straightened her white coat. "Let me handle this. Stay with the prince." She left the exam room, closing the door behind her. Through the small window, Ethan could see the reception area filling with dragon guards, their scaled armor gleaming under the bright lights. Their captain, a massive dragon with crimson scales, was speaking forcefully to Dr. Morgan, who stood her ground, arms crossed. Ethan couldn't hear what was being said, but the body language was clear enough. The guards wanted the prince returned immediately. Dr. Morgan was refusing. The standoff continued for several tense minutes before the captain raised a clawed hand, clearly threatening. Dr. Morgan didn't flinch. Instead, she held up her tablet, showing the captain something on the screen. The dragon captain's demeanor changed instantly. He leaned forward, studying the tablet, then stepped back, saying something to his guards. Two of them immediately left the medical center at a run. Dr. Morgan returned to the exam room, her expression grim but determined. I showed them the prince's scans and explained that moving him now could be fatal. They've gone to report to the emperor. And Ethan asked, dread pooling in his stomach. And now we wait, Dr. Morgan replied. But whatever happens, we're going to keep treating this child. I've taken an oath to do no harm, and abandoning a sick child, no matter who his father is, would definitely qualify as harm. Hours passed. The prince's condition improved steadily under the human doctor's care. His fever began to recede, and his breathing grew less labored. Ethan remained by his side, talking softly to him whenever he woke, reassuring him that he was safe. It was nearly dawn when the medical center doors slid open again. This time, it wasn't guards who entered, but a solitary figure that made everyone in the room bow deeply. Emperor Drakthar himself had arrived. The Dragon Emperor was imposing even by dragon standards, nearly 8 feet tall, with scales of midnight black shot through with gold. His presence seemed to fill the room, commanding and cold. Dr. Morgan met him in the reception area, her back straight, her voice steady as she explained the prince's condition and treatment. The emperor listened in silence, his golden eyes revealing nothing of his thoughts. Then, to everyone's surprise, he asked to see his son. When the emperor entered the exam room, Ethan rose from his chair beside the prince's bed, heart hammering in his chest. This was it. This was where he would face the consequences of his actions. Emperor Drakthar barely spared him a glance. His attention was fixed on his son, who lay sleeping peacefully, his color already improving, his breathing steady. You were told he had the wasting, the emperor said, his deep voice betraying no emotion. Yes, your imperial majesty, Dr. Morgan replied. But our diagnosis is different. He has a severe bacterial infection that had progressed to sepsis, a systemic inflammatory response that can be fatal if untreated. But it's responding well to our antibiotics. And you're certain of this diagnosis? The emperor asked. As certain as medical science allows, your majesty, Dr. Morgan said. The evidence is clear in our scans. The emperor was silent for a long moment, studying his son. Then he turned his golden gaze to Ethan. And you? You are the human who took my son from the royal medical wing. Ethan swallowed hard, but met the emperor's eyes. Yes, your majesty. Why? The question was simple but laden with potential consequences. Because he needed help, your majesty, Ethan said, surprising himself with how steady his voice was. And no one was helping him. The emperor's eyes narrowed. You risked your life and your position to help a child not of your species. A child you did not know. I didn't think about the risk, your majesty, Ethan replied honestly. I just saw a sick child who needed help. Something unreadable flickered in the emperor's expression. He looked back at his son, then at the human medical equipment steadily pushing life-saving medications into the prince's veins. My royal physicians assured me nothing could be done, he said, almost to himself. That the wasting had taken hold and my son was beyond saving. That it would be a mercy to let him pass with dignity rather than prolong his suffering. They were wrong, your majesty, Dr. Morgan said firmly. And with respect, leaving a child alone to suffer is never merciful. The emperor's head snapped up, his golden eyes flashing with anger at her boldness. But then, remarkably, the anger faded, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. No, he said quietly. It is not. He turned back to Ethan. You will remain with my son until he is fully recovered. He seems comforted by your presence. Of course, your majesty, Ethan said, relief washing over him. The emperor moved to leave, then paused at the door. Dr. Morgan, I would speak with you about this bacterial infection and why my royal physicians failed to identify it. I'd be happy to discuss it with you, Your Majesty, Dr. Morgan replied. As they left the room, Ethan sank back into his chair, exhausted but relieved. Prince Xerxes stirred, his amber eyes opening to focus on Ethan. You stayed, the prince said softly. Ethan smiled, taking the small clawed hand in his. Of course I stayed. How are you feeling? Better, the prince said, sounding surprised. The pain is less, and I can breathe easier. The medicine is working, Ethan told him. Dr. Morgan says you're going to be just fine. The prince's vertical pupils widened slightly. I saw my father here. Was it a dream? No, it wasn't a dream, Ethan assured him. He came to see you. He's talking with the doctor now. He's not angry with you? The prince asked, concern evident in his voice. Ethan managed a smile. I think he's more concerned about you right now. The prince fell silent, his expression thoughtful. Then he said, in dragon culture, when someone saves a royal life, they become bloodbound to the royal family. Did you know that? Ethan shook his head. I don't know much about dragon customs, Your Highness. It means your family now, the prince said solemnly. Not by birth, but by choice and action. More important than birth family, sometimes. Before Ethan could respond to this startling information, the door opened, and Emperor Drakthar returned with Dr. Morgan. The Emperor's expression was thunderous, a barely contained rage evident in every line of his powerful body. My royal physicians have been summoned, he announced. It seems they have been less than truthful about my son's condition. Dr. Morgan's expression was carefully neutral. I've explained to His Imperial Majesty that the symptoms of this infection can resemble the early stages of the wasting. But any competent physician should have been able to tell the difference with proper testing. The Emperor moved to his son's bedside. How do you feel, Xerxes? Better, father, the prince replied, his voice stronger than it had been hours before. The human medicine is helping. The Emperor nodded, then did something that shocked Ethan to his core. He placed his hand gently on his son's head, a gesture of affection rarely seen from the notoriously cold dragon ruler. Rest and heal, the Emperor said. We will speak more when you are stronger. As the Emperor turned to leave again, Prince Xerxes spoke up. Father, did you know Ethan is bloodbound to us now? He saved my life. The Emperor froze, then slowly turned back. His golden eyes fixed on Ethan with new intensity. Is this true? You know of this custom? No, Your Majesty, Ethan admitted. The prince just told me about it. I didn't know when I helped him. Yet you helped him anyway, expecting nothing in return, the Emperor said thoughtfully. Perhaps even expecting punishment. Ethan nodded. I just wanted him to be okay. The Emperor was silent for a long moment, studying Ethan as if seeing him, truly seeing him, for the first time. The blood bond is our most sacred tradition, he finally said. Not invoked lightly or often. But my son is correct. By our oldest laws, you are now bloodbound to the royal family. He stepped closer to Ethan, towering over him. When my son is recovered, we will speak of what this means. For now, continue your vigil. With that, the Emperor swept from the room, leaving Ethan stunned and wondering what exactly he had gotten himself into. Don't worry, Prince Xerxes said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Being bloodbound is a good thing. You'll see. As the prince drifted back to sleep, his condition steadily improving thanks to the human medicine, Ethan couldn't help but wonder how this unexpected turn of events would change his life, and perhaps the relationship between humans and dragons forever. In the corridor outside, Emperor Drakthar confronted his royal physicians. Their explanations about the prince's condition, that they had truly believed it was the wasting, that they had followed all proper protocols, fell on increasingly deaf ears as Dr. Morgan methodically presented her evidence. The bacterial infection should have been detected in the first round of testing. The treatment should have been straightforward. The implications were clear. Either the royal physicians were criminally incompetent, or they had deliberately misdiagnosed the prince. Which of my sons stands to gain if Xerxes dies? The Emperor asked his most trusted advisor, a dragon elder named Vortigern. The advisor's expression remained carefully neutral. Prince Kaldor would be fourth in line instead of fifth, Your Majesty. And who appointed these particular physicians to attend my son? The appointments were recommended by Lady Salathria, Your Majesty. Kaldor's mother. The Emperor said, his voice dangerously soft. How convenient. As the Emperor swept away to deal with this apparent conspiracy within his own court, Dr. Morgan returned to check on her patient. She found Ethan still sitting vigil beside the sleeping prince. You should get some rest, she told him. The prince is stable now. He's going to recover. Ethan shook his head. I'll stay a bit longer. I promised him I would be here. Dr. Morgan smiled. You know, what you did was incredibly brave. And incredibly foolish. I know, Ethan agreed. But I couldn't just leave him there. No, Dr. Morgan said thoughtfully. I don't think you could have. It's not in your nature. She checked the prince's vital signs, nodding in satisfaction. His response to the antibiotics is remarkable. Another day or two, and he should be well enough to return to the royal quarters. And then what happens? Ethan asked. Dr. Morgan shrugged. That's up to the Emperor, I suppose. But I have a feeling things are going to change around here. The Emperor was disturbed by how easily his son's condition was misdiagnosed, and by how quickly our human medicine resolved it. As she left, Ethan settled back in his chair, watching the steady rise and fall of Prince Zira's chest. Whatever came next, he knew he had made the right choice. One human janitor had changed the course of a child's life, and perhaps the course of an empire. But as he drifted off to sleep in the uncomfortable chair, Ethan had no idea just how profound those changes would be, or how central his role would become in the transformation of the Dragon Imperium. 3 days later, Prince Zira's was well enough to sit up in bed and eat solid food. The antibiotics had worked remarkably well, and the infection that had nearly claimed his life was in retreat. His scales had regained much of their vibrant emerald color, and his amber eyes were clear and alert. Ethan had remained by his side throughout, taking breaks only when the prince was sleeping soundly. He'd called in to his supervisor to explain his absence, or tried to. To his surprise, his supervisor had already been informed that Ethan was on special assignment to the royal family and was not to be disturbed. Word had spread quickly through the human section of the station. The human janitor who had saved the Dragon Prince's life was something of a celebrity now. Medical staff would find excuses to peek into the prince's room, curious to see the unlikely pair. Ethan found it all rather embarrassing, but Prince Zira's seemed to enjoy the attention. On Dragon Worlds, we don't talk much with humans, the prince told Ethan as they shared a simple meal. The prince had developed a taste for human food, particularly the gelatin desserts the medical staff kept bringing him. Father says it's important to maintain proper distance between ruling species and servant species. Ethan winced at the blunt assessment, but wasn't particularly surprised. And what do you think, Your Highness? The prince considered this, his head tilted in a gesture that reminded Ethan of curious birds on Earth. I think Father might be wrong about some things, he said finally. You didn't maintain proper distance. You touched me, carried me, stayed with me. And because of that, I'm alive. Before Ethan could respond, the door slid open, and Emperor Drakthar entered. Ethan immediately stood and bowed deeply, while Prince Zira straightened in his bed. Father, the prince greeted, his voice stronger than it had been days before. The Emperor inclined his head to his son, then turned his golden gaze to Ethan. Leave us, he commanded. I would speak with my son alone. Ethan bowed again. Of course, Your Majesty. As he moved to leave, Prince Zira called out, Ethan will come back, won't he, Father? The Emperor studied his son's anxious expression. If that is your wish, he said finally. Ethan waited in the corridor outside, trying not to pace nervously. The medical staff gave him sympathetic looks, but kept their distance. The Emperor's personal guards flanked the door, their expressions inscrutable behind their ornate helmets. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only 20 minutes, the door slid open, and the Emperor emerged. Human, he said, his deep voice reverberating in the corridor. Walk with me. Ethan fell into step beside the Emperor, acutely aware of the difference in their heights and the curious stares they received as they moved through the human medical center. The Emperor's guards followed at a discreet distance. "My son tells me you have been kind to him," the Emperor said as they walked. "That you speak to him not as a prince, but as a child worthy of attention and care." Ethan chose his words carefully. "Prince Xeras is very intelligent and curious, Your Majesty. It's easy to talk with him." "Indeed." The Emperor was silent for a moment. "He also tells me you have told him stories of Earth, of your home there before you came to Imperial space." Ethan nodded. "He asked about it, Your Majesty. I hope that wasn't inappropriate." "My son is fourth in line to the throne," the Emperor said, seeming to change the subject. "In dragon culture, fourth sons are considered fortunate but not crucial. They receive less attention, less training, less everything." "With respect, Your Majesty," Ethan said, surprising himself with his boldness. "Every child deserves attention and care, regardless of their position." The Emperor stopped walking and turned to face Ethan directly. His massive height meant Ethan had to crane his neck to meet his gaze. "You truly believe this?" the Emperor said, not a question but an observation. "I do, Your Majesty." The Emperor studied him for a long moment. "The blood bond you have formed with my son is sacred and binding under our laws. It makes you, in essence, a member of the royal family, not by birth but by deed. This has not happened between a dragon and a human in the history of our species' interactions." Ethan's mouth went dry. "I don't know what to say, Your Majesty." "Say nothing yet," the Emperor advised. "Listen, things are changing in the Imperium. What happened to my son has revealed fractures in our system, weaknesses I had not perceived." His golden eyes narrowed. "The physicians who abandoned my son have been dealt with, as have those who appointed them." The cold way he said this made Ethan shiver. Dragon justice was swift and often final. "But more significantly," the Emperor continued, "this incident has forced me to reconsider certain assumptions about humans. Your kind has always been viewed as useful laborers, but little more. Yet one of you, a simple cleaner, showed more honor and compassion than my own royal court." He began walking again, and Ethan hurried to keep up. "My son will be returning to the royal quarters tomorrow," the Emperor said. "He has requested that you accompany him." Ethan nearly stumbled in surprise. "Me, Your Majesty?" "Indeed. As his bloodbound, you have certain rights and responsibilities. Traditionally, you would serve as his personal guardian, educator, and confidant." The Emperor's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. Usually, this role is filled by a distinguished dragon warrior or scholar. Never in our history by a human janitor. Ethan wasn't sure if he was being insulted or not. "I'm not qualified for such a position, Your Majesty." "Perhaps not by traditional measures," the Emperor conceded. "But my son trusts you, and you have proven your worth through action rather than birth or station. This appeals to me." They had reached the boundary between the human sector and the main station. The Emperor stopped again. "Consider this offer carefully, human. If you accept, your contract with the maintenance division will be terminated. You will be given quarters in the royal wing. Your duties will be to my son alone. You will be accorded the respect due to a bloodbound of the royal family." His eyes narrowed. "But you will also face challenges. Many in my court will resent your position. Some may seek to undermine or harm you." "And if I decline?" Ethan asked, though he already knew his answer. "Then you will be generously compensated for saving my son's life. Your labor contract will be considered fulfilled, and you may return to Earth with our gratitude." The Emperor's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "But my son would be disappointed." Ethan thought of Prince Xeras, of the intelligence and curiosity in those amber eyes, of the way the child had been left alone to die because he was only a fourth son. "I would be honored to serve as Prince Xeras' bloodbound, Your Majesty," Ethan said firmly. The Emperor nodded, as if he had expected no other answer. "Return to my son. Tomorrow, you both begin your new lives." As the Emperor swept away, his guards in tow, Ethan stood for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Then he turned and hurried back to Prince Xeras' room, where the young dragon was waiting anxiously. "What did father say?" the prince asked immediately. "Did he tell you about being my bloodbound?" Ethan smiled, taking his now familiar seat beside the bed. "He did, and I accepted." The prince's face lit up with joy, his amber eyes glowing. "Really? You'll stay with me?" "Really," Ethan confirmed. "Though I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to do as a bloodbound." "You'll be my guardian and teacher," Prince Xeris explained excitedly. "You'll live in the royal wing and attend court functions with me. You'll advise me and protect me." His expression grew serious. "It's a great honor, Ethan. Only the most trusted are chosen as bloodbound." "I'm not sure I'm qualified to teach a dragon prince," Ethan admitted. "You'll teach me about humans," the prince said confidently. "About Earth and human ways. And I'll teach you about dragons." He grinned, showing small pointed teeth. "It will be an exchange of knowledge." Ethan couldn't help but smile at the prince's enthusiasm. "Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse?" The next day, Prince Xeris was discharged from the Human Medical Center. Dr. Morgan performed a final examination and pronounced him fully recovered. "The infection is completely gone," she told Ethan as she packed up her equipment. "His immune system has rebounded remarkably well. Dragons are resilient once they get the right treatment." "Thank you for everything," Ethan said sincerely. "If you hadn't been willing to treat him..." Dr. Morgan waved away his thanks. "I'm a doctor. I treat whoever needs help." She smiled at the prince. "Even dragon royalty." Prince Xeris bowed to her, a gesture of respect rarely shown by dragons to humans. "I am in your debt, Dr. Morgan. If you ever need anything within my power to grant, you have only to ask." The doctor looked startled but pleased. "Just stay healthy, Your Highness. That's all the thanks I need." A royal escort arrived to accompany them back to the dragon sector. As they walked through the station, Ethan noticed how differently the dragon guards treated him now. There was a wary respect in their manner, a careful deference that had never been shown to him as a janitor. The royal quarters were even more opulent than the medical wing had been. Gold and precious gems adorned every surface, and the ceilings soared to heights that made Ethan feel dizzy when he looked up. Prince Xeris led him through corridors and antechambers, pointing out important rooms and introducing him to royal servants and lesser nobles they encountered. The reactions to Ethan's presence were mixed. Some dragons regarded him with open curiosity, others with barely concealed disdain. A few, particularly the younger dragons, seemed genuinely interested in the human who had become bloodbound to a prince. Prince Xeris' personal quarters were a suite of rooms larger than the entire apartment building Ethan had lived in on Earth. The main chamber was dominated by a platform bed suited to dragon physiology, with a heated stone slab beneath plush cushions and silken sheets. Ornate tapestries depicting dragon history adorned the walls, and a massive viewport offered a spectacular view of the dragon homeworld below. "And these will be your rooms," the prince said, leading Ethan through a connecting door to a smaller but still luxurious suite. "They've been prepared for you." Ethan stared in amazement at what was to be his new home. The furnishings had been adapted for human use. A proper bed rather than a heated stone slab, chairs and tables scaled to human height. Someone had even provided Earth-style clothing in his size, laid out neatly on the bed. "This is incredible," Ethan managed. Prince Xeris beamed. "Father ordered it all done while I was in the medical center. He wanted you to be comfortable." A chime sounded, announcing visitors. Prince Xeris called out permission to enter, and the door slid open to reveal a group of adult dragons, 3 males and 2 females, all wearing the insignia of the royal court. "Ah," Prince Xeris said, his demeanor becoming more formal. "My brothers and sister. Come to welcome me home, I presume." The eldest of the group, a dragon with scales the color of burnished copper, stepped forward. "Brother, we are pleased to see you recovered." His gaze slid to Ethan, his expression cooling. "And this is the human we've heard about?" "This is Ethan Cole," Prince Xeris said firmly. "My bloodbound. Ethan, may I present my elder brothers, Prince Kalida, Crown Prince and heir to the throne, Prince Vorith, second in line, Prince Dracomir, third in line, and my elder sister, Princess Serafina." Ethan bowed deeply. "Your Highnesses, it's an honor to meet you." The fifth dragon, who had not been introduced, stepped forward. His scales were a deep, metallic blue, and his eyes were the same amber as Prince Xerus. "And I am Prince Kaldor, now fifth in line. Thanks to your intervention." There was a cold edge to his voice that made Ethan instantly wary. This was the prince who would have moved up in succession if Xerus had died. "The honor is ours," Prince Kalida said smoothly, shooting a warning glance at Kaldor. "Father has told us of your courage in saving our brother. The Imperium is grateful." The formalities continued for several minutes, the royal siblings asking polite questions about Prince Xerus' recovery while studiously avoiding direct conversation with Ethan. Only Princess Serafina, a graceful dragon with scales like pale jade, showed genuine warmth, thanking Ethan personally for saving her youngest brother. After they left, Prince Xerus sighed. "That went better than I expected." "Really?" Ethan asked, surprised. The prince nodded. "Kalida was actually civil, and Serafina seemed to like you. Only Kaldor was openly hostile. He's the one who would have benefited if you had." Ethan trailed off, not wanting to finish the thought. "Died?" "Yes," Prince Xerus said matter-of-factly. "He would have moved to fourth in line. Not that it matters much. The chances of him ever taking the throne are vanishingly small." "Is that why he resents you?" Ethan asked. The prince shrugged. "Partly. But mostly it's because his mother, Lady Salathria, has always been ambitious for him. She was the one who appointed those particular physicians to attend me when I fell ill." Ethan felt a chill. "Are you saying she deliberately?" "We have no proof," Prince Xerus interrupted. "And father has already addressed the issue. Lady Salathria has been sent to oversee our mining operations in the outer system, a position of great responsibility, far from the royal court." The diplomatic way the young prince handled the topic of what was essentially an attempted assassination by a family member was disconcerting. But it was a reminder that despite his youth, Prince Xerus had been raised in the complex and often deadly world of dragon court politics. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustment for Ethan. He had to learn court protocols, the complex hierarchy of dragon nobility, and the daily routines of the royal household. Prince Xerus proved to be a patient teacher, guiding Ethan through the intricacies of court life with good humor. In turn, Ethan began the prince's education about humans and Earth culture. He was surprised to discover how little the young dragon knew about the planet that provided so much of the labor force for the Imperium. "Wait," Prince Xerus said during one of their lessons. "You're saying humans have over 200 independent nations on one planet? And they all have different languages and customs?" Ethan nodded. "Earth isn't unified like the dragon worlds. We have thousands of languages, cultures, religions, and political systems." "That sounds chaotic," the prince marveled. "How do you get anything done?" "It can be challenging," Ethan admitted. "But there's a beauty in the diversity too. Different perspectives, different approaches to problems." The prince considered this. "Is that why humans adapt so well to new situations? Because you're used to dealing with differences?" "That might be part of it," Ethan agreed. "Humans have always had to adapt to survive." These conversations became the highlight of Ethan's days. Prince Xerus was a quick study, absorbing information about Earth with genuine enthusiasm. He was particularly fascinated by human art and music, which were so different from the formal, traditional arts of dragon culture. As the prince's health continued to improve, he began to resume his royal duties, with Ethan at his side. Court functions were a trial for Ethan at first. The barely concealed disdain of many dragon nobles made him acutely uncomfortable. But Prince Xerus insisted on introducing Ethan as his bloodbound at every opportunity, forcing the court to acknowledge his position. Emperor Drakthar watched these developments with interest. He summoned Ethan for private audiences occasionally, questioning him about Earth and human society with surprising depth. Ethan got the impression the Emperor was evaluating him, testing his knowledge and character. During one such audience, about 2 months after Prince Xerus' recovery, the Emperor broached a new subject. I have been considering the role of humans in the Imperium, he said, pacing before the massive viewport in his private study. For generations, we have viewed your kind as useful laborers, but little more. Your position as my son's bloodbound has caused disruption in this perception. I'm sorry if I've caused problems, Your Majesty, Ethan said carefully. The Emperor waved away his concern. Disruption is not always negative, human. Sometimes it reveals weaknesses in a system that need to be addressed. He turned to face Ethan directly. Tell me, in your observation, how are humans treated in the Imperium? Ethan hesitated, unsure how honest he should be. Speak freely, the Emperor commanded. I require truth, not flattery. Humans are treated as expendable labor, Your Majesty, Ethan said, choosing his words carefully. We're given the jobs dragons consider beneath them. We live in segregated quarters with fewer amenities. We have few rights and little recourse if we're mistreated. The Emperor nodded, unsurprised. And yet, despite this treatment, one of you chose to risk everything to save my son. Why? Because it was the right thing to do, Ethan said simply. He was a child in need. His species didn't matter. A very human perspective, the Emperor observed. Dragons would say the strong survive and the weak perish. It is the natural order. With respect, Your Majesty, there's nothing natural about leaving a sick child alone to die when treatment is available, Ethan said, unable to keep a hint of anger from his voice. To his surprise, the Emperor laughed, a rumbling sound rarely heard in the royal court. Indeed, perhaps there is wisdom in the human perspective after all. His expression grew serious again. I have decided to make changes to the status of humans in the Imperium. Your kind has proven more valuable than we previously acknowledged. Before Ethan could respond, the door burst open and a royal guard rushed in. Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion, but there's an emergency. Prince Xeris has been attacked. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. He was running before the Emperor could even respond, racing through the corridors toward the prince's chambers. The Emperor and his guards followed close behind. They found Prince Xeris in the main hall outside his quarters, surrounded by guards and medical staff. To Ethan's immense relief, the prince was conscious and sitting upright, though a nasty gash on his arm was being treated by a medical drone. Xeris, Ethan called, pushing through the guards to reach the prince's side. What happened? Are you all right? The young dragon managed a small smile. I'm fine, Ethan. Just a scratch. He looked past Ethan to his father, who had just arrived. Father, I'm sorry for the commotion. Who did this? The Emperor demanded, his voice like thunder. A captain of the guard stepped forward. Your Majesty, the assailant has been captured. It was Prince Kaldor. A ripple of shock went through the assembled crowd. The Emperor's expression darkened dangerously. Bring him to me. Now. Prince Xeris reached out to grasp Ethan's hand. It was strange, Ethan. He came to my chambers, saying he wanted to talk. Then he just attacked. But he seemed confused, almost like he wasn't fully aware of what he was doing. Ethan frowned. This didn't sound like a calculated assassination attempt. Did he say anything? He kept muttering about restoring the natural order and how I should have died from the wasting. The prince winced as the medical drone sealed his wound. But his eyes were strange, unfocused. And he smelled odd. Before Ethan could question this further, guards arrived with Prince Kaldor in restraints. The blue-scale dragon was indeed acting strangely, his movements jerky, his amber eyes dilated and unfocused. He seemed barely aware of his surroundings. What is the meaning of this? The Emperor demanded. Why have you attacked your brother? Prince Kaldor's head lolled to one side. The weak must perish, he slurred. Human interference, unnatural. Dr. Morgan, who had been summoned from the Human Medical Center, pushed forward to examine Prince Kaldor. After a brief examination, she turned to the Emperor. Your Majesty, Prince Kaldor appears to be heavily drugged. His pupils are dilated, his reflexes impaired, and his speech patterns suggest some kind of neurological interference. The Emperor's expression shifted from rage to concern. You believe he was not acting of his own volition. I can't be certain without proper tests, Dr. Morgan said. but I would say it's highly unlikely he was fully aware of his actions. A new voice entered the conversation, cold, calculating, and familiar. How convenient for him. All heads turned to see Lady Salathria gliding into the hall. She was supposed to be overseeing mining operations in the outer system, yet here she was, her silver scales gleaming in the light, her posture radiating contempt. "Mother," Prince Kaldor mumbled, trying to focus on her. Lady Salathria ignored her son. First, the human disrupts the natural order by saving a prince who was clearly too weak to survive on his own. Now my son is conveniently drugged when he attempts to restore balance. "Salathria," the emperor growled. "You were ordered to the outer system." "And I obeyed, my emperor," she said with a mocking bow, "until I received word that a human had been elevated to bloodbound status. Such an abomination could not go unchallenged." Ethan suddenly understood. "You drugged your own son and sent him to attack Prince Xeris? Your own family?" Lady Salathria's cold gaze fell on Ethan. "Family? The Dragon Imperium is not about family, human. It is about strength. The strong rule, the weak serve or perish. For millennia, this has been our way, until you interfered." The emperor stepped forward, his massive form towering over Lady Salathria. "You admit to orchestrating both attempts on my son's life." "I admit to trying to maintain the purity and strength of the dragon line," she said proudly. "Xeris was weak. He should have died. It was the natural order." "And if your son had succeeded in killing Xeris today?" the emperor asked, his voice dangerously soft. Lady Salathria smiled coldly. "Kaldor would have been executed for his crime, of course. A tragedy, but it would have removed 2 weak links from the royal succession. The calculated cruelty of it, sacrificing her own son as a disposable tool, made Ethan feel physically ill. But the emperor's reaction was unexpected. Instead of the rage Ethan anticipated, Emperor Drakther looked almost sad. "I have ruled the Imperium for 2 centuries, he said quietly. "In that time, I have seen countless plots, betrayals, and power plays. I accepted them as the price of rulership, the natural competition for power among our kind." He glanced at Prince Xeris, who was watching the proceedings with wide eyes. "But I have never seen a dragon willing to sacrifice her own offspring for political gain." "Because you are growing weak, like your son," Lady Salathria hissed. "Influenced by human sentimentality." The emperor's expression hardened. "No, Salathria. Because I am finally seeing clearly." He turned to the guards. "Take her to the detention level, and have Prince Kaldor taken to the medical center for treatment and observation. He is a victim here as much as Prince Xeris." As Lady Salathria was led away, still spewing venom about weakness and human influence, Prince Xeris approached his father. "What will happen to her?" he asked quietly. The emperor placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Justice will be served, but not in the old way." He looked at Ethan. "I think perhaps we have something to learn from humans after all." In the days that followed, the imperial court was abuzz with the scandal. Lady Salathria's plot had exposed deep divisions within dragon society, between those who clung to the traditional strength above all philosophy and those who had begun to question whether that philosophy still served the Imperium well. Prince Kaldor, once the drugs had cleared his system, was horrified by what he had been manipulated into doing. He formally apologized to Prince Xeris and asked for the emperor's judgment. To everyone's surprise, the emperor forgave his son. "You were a weapon wielded by another," he declared before the assembled court. "The blame lies not with you, but with she who used you." As for Lady Salathria, her punishment was considered revolutionary by dragon standards. Instead of execution, which would have been the traditional penalty for treason, the emperor sentenced her to serve as a laborer in the very mining operations she had been sent to oversee, working alongside the humans she so despised. "Perhaps through labor and service, you will learn what true strength is," the emperor told her at her sentencing. 1 month after the attack, the emperor summoned Ethan, Prince Xeris, and Dr. Morgan to his private council chamber. Also present were Crown Prince Kalida and several high-ranking imperial advisors. "I have been contemplating the future of the Imperium," the emperor began without preamble. For too long, we dragons have valued a narrow definition of strength, physical power, dominance, the capacity for violence. We have disdained what we perceived as weakness in others, particularly humans. He paced the length of the chamber, his massive form casting shadows in the golden light. But recent events have forced me to reconsider. When my son fell ill, it was not dragon strength that saved him, but human compassion, a quality we have long dismissed as weakness. He stopped before Ethan. You had nothing to gain and everything to lose by helping my son. Yet you did it without hesitation. That is a kind of strength we dragons have forgotten. Dr. Morgan spoke up. If I may, Your Majesty, humans don't see compassion as weakness. We see it as necessary for a functioning society. No one succeeds entirely alone. Precisely, the Emperor said. And this is the lesson the Imperium must learn if we are to continue to thrive. He turned to address the assembled advisors. I am instituting immediate reforms regarding the status of humans within the Imperium. Segregated housing will end. Wages will be equalized. Humans with appropriate skills will be eligible for positions previously reserved for dragons. The advisors exchanged shocked glances, but none dared object openly. Furthermore, the Emperor continued, I am establishing a new advisory council composed of both dragons and humans to ensure that all perspectives are considered in imperial decisions. He nodded to Dr. Morgan. Doctor, I would be honored if you would serve as the first human member of this council. Dr. Morgan looked stunned. I would be honored, Your Majesty. The Emperor turned to Ethan. As for you, Ethan Cole, bloodbound to my son, I have a more specific role in mind. You will serve as the official liaison between human communities and the royal court. You will bring human concerns directly to me and help implement the changes I have outlined. Ethan bowed deeply. I'll do my best, Your Majesty. Prince Xeris stepped forward. Father, I would like to assist Ethan in this role. As fourth in line, my duties to the succession are limited, but I could serve the Imperium by helping bridge our cultures. The Emperor smiled, a rare sight that transformed his usually stern countenance. A wise suggestion, my son. Together, you and your bloodbound may accomplish what centuries of separate development could not, true understanding between our species. Crown Prince Kalida, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Father, while I support these reforms in principle, there will be resistance. Many dragons hold the old views deeply. Indeed, the Emperor acknowledged. Change will not come easily or quickly, but it must come. The incident with Lady Salathria has shown us the dangerous endpoint of our philosophy of strength above all, a society where even family bonds mean nothing compared to power. He looked at Prince Xeris, who still bore the scar from his brother's manipulated attack. We must find a better way. As the meeting concluded and the various participants dispersed, Prince Xeris pulled Ethan aside. Did you ever imagine, when you found me that night, that all this would happen? The young prince asked. Ethan laughed softly. Not in a million years, Your Highness. I just wanted to help a sick kid. And you changed an empire, Prince Xeris said solemnly. Father told me something interesting yesterday. He said that for centuries, dragons have believed that our greatest strength was our physical power and our longevity. But perhaps our true strength lies in our capacity to change, to learn, to grow beyond what we have been. That's a very human perspective, Ethan observed. The prince smiled, his amber eyes bright with intelligence and hope. Perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the future lies not in dragons or humans alone, but in what we can become together. As they walked together through the corridors of the Imperial Station, the Dragon Prince and his human bloodbound, Ethan reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. One simple act of compassion, one moment when he'd chosen to see not a dragon but a child in need, had set in motion changes that would reshape an empire. In the years that followed, the Dragon Imperium underwent a transformation unlike any in its long history. Integration between dragons and humans proceeded, sometimes smoothly, sometimes with resistance, but always moving forward. The new advisory council, which eventually grew to include representatives from all species within imperial space, became a model for collaborative governance. Prince Xeris, with Ethan at his side, became the face of the new Imperium, traveling to human colonies, listening to concerns, implementing changes. The young prince who had once been left alone to die became known as the Bridge Prince, the connection between dragon tradition and a more inclusive future. Dr. Morgan established a new medical training program that combined dragon and human medical knowledge, creating treatments and protocols that benefited both species. The bacterial infection that had nearly claimed Prince Xeris' life became easily treatable throughout the Imperium. As for Ethan Cole, the human janitor who had carried a dying prince to help, he never returned to maintenance work. As the prince's bloodbound and the emperor's liaison, he became one of the most influential humans in Imperial history. Children of both species would learn his story, how one person's compassion had changed the course of an empire. Years later, when asked if he ever regretted his decision to help the prince that night, Ethan would always give the same answer. How could I regret doing the right thing? In the moment it matters most. All that counts is seeing someone who needs help and offering it, regardless of who or what they are. It was a simple philosophy, born of human compassion, but it had proven strong enough to transform an empire built on power into one that valued connection as much as strength. And when Emperor Drakthar finally stepped down after 3 centuries of rule, passing the throne to Crown Prince Kalida, his final imperial decree was to establish the Cold Doctrine, a principle that would guide the Imperium's dealings with all species. Strength without compassion is merely force. True power lies in seeing the value of all beings. No one had cared about the Dragon Emperor's sick son until a human cleaner carried him to hospital. And everything changed. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.